WRAL was there when a puff of white smoke told the world in 2013 a new pope had been elected, Pope Francis. Former anchor David Crabtree covered that historic event for us, and he joins us now. David, I vividly remember seeing you outside the Vatican, photographer Keith Baker capturing that moment. Tell us what that moment was like.
Yeah, it was March 13th, 2013. We had been waiting. We had seen several days when black smoke appeared, meaning no election had happened. When we saw the white smoke, it gave me chills. It still does give me chills seeing that again, remembering that moment, hearing the bells begin to peal in St. Peter's Square, and then the crowds just rushing, jumping over barriers, doing anything they could to be a part of what was happening in St. Peter's Square. It was an amazing moment.
A memorable moment for sure. You were also there for Pope Francis's only official visit to the U.S. as Pope in 2015. What do you remember from that reception, and what stood out to you?
Two things in particular, Renee. One, his address to Congress. It was a joint session, a special session of Congress. And he delivered that address in English, the entire address. It was amazing. The reception of members of Congress, whether they were Catholic, non-Catholic, whether they were Democrat, Republican, knew the moment that was happening before them. And then talking with members of our congressional delegation afterward, how excited they were to have been a part of that day. It was really a magical time in Washington and throughout the country. And then Keith and I also went on to follow the Pope in Philadelphia, where the crowds were just massive to see him. And it was not only the reality of those massive crowds that lined the streets for hours and hours just for a chance to get a glimpse of him as he drove by, but also the stories of watching him go to the prisons in and around Philadelphia, to meet with the marginalized, to meet with people who never expected to meet anyone of this stature, was quite humbling.
And you talked about the crowds coming out to see the Pope. I mean, he's being remembered as the Pope of the people, the people's Pope. To you, what do you think made this Pope different from other popes?
I think because he grew up in poverty in Argentina is the big thing. He knew and continued to live into the experience of having so little throughout his life. He was never a person who wanted the grandeur and the grandiosity of living in the papal residence. One great story about him is that either the day after he became Pope or 2 days later, he wanted to fly back to Argentina and call the airlines himself to make a reservation. And the whoever was on the other end of that line with the airlines was stunned when he gave them his name and said, "Wait a minute, you don't do this any longer." And he said, "No, I just want to I just need to fly home. That's it." And one other thing, though, about that night that stood out that I think set the tone for his papacy. And that was after he had been announced to the world. And understand, there were at least 300,000 people in St. Peter's Square, stretching all the way back to the Tiber River and beyond. And as he wrapped up his comments, he said, "I will pray for you, and I ask that you pray for me." And he bowed for about 15 seconds. And think of the enormity of 300,000 human beings being gathered together. And I recall so vividly, there was not one sound that happened in that 15 seconds. The weight, no matter where you may be in your life spiritually, the weight of the spirituality of that moment was real. And I never forgot that. And I can only think that that helped propel him through a very turbulent and happy and sometimes very sad 12 years.
David, I know you're a man of deep faith, and to our viewers, whether you're part of the Catholic faithful or not, what are some lessons we can all learn about the way Pope Francis dedicated his life to helping others?
Listen to others first. Just listen. Be patient, be generous, be kind, and always look for some way to serve someone else.
David, I know covering Pope Francis at the Vatican and his visit to the U.S. just rank among the most memorable moments of your career at WRAL. We thank you for sharing your perspective and your insights. Always good to see you, my friend.
Always good to see you. And thanks, Renee.
All right. Thank you, David.